holidays. So even though it was getting dark pretty early in the day, it was still pretty warm outside. I went to school in North Carolina. And I remember that night very clearly because on that particular night, I was getting laid. She was a friend of my roommate, and she'd invited me over for a glass of wine on a Friday night. Now, it's probably obvious to you that she'd invited me over for a bottle of wine on a weekend that her roommate just happened to be out of town because obviously she wanted to have sex. And I figured that. But at the time, I had no idea why she might have been interested in me because I knew I was ugly. I mean, I had a ton of evidence for that fact. So when I ended up in bed with a pretty girl like that in college, I was, frankly grateful. Anyway, we finished a couple of bottles of wine sitting on the rug between the beds of the dorm room on the floor. And we made out for a while, and then she took my hand and stood up and led me to the bed. Funny how you remember these details, that I got under the blanket before taking my pants off because I was still really insecure about the size of my penis, and I didn't want her to see it. So I slipped my pants off under the blanket. And when I started fumbling with the condom, the nightmare really began because I lost my erection. As soon as I started to unwrap it, I went limp. And of course, she noticed, and she's like, "What's wrong?" Which is not what you want to hear. So I kept trying, and it kept getting more limp and smaller and smaller. I was just too nervous to get it up. Back then, I'd never even heard of a guy having problems getting it up when he was nervous. Maybe it was just less talked about back then. In any case, I thought I must be the only guy in the world who was such a wuss that he couldn't get hard when he was in bed with a pretty girl. And trust me, I had very, very normal hormones. Now, to her credit, roommate's friend was incredibly patient and understanding for an 18-year-old girl. And eventually she suggested that we try it without the condom because she was on the pill. I almost resented not being off the hook because now I couldn't even blame the condom. I focused literally every bit of my mind and willpower onto getting myself turned on. I was freaking out. I imagined every girl that had ever turned me on in my entire life. I even tried fantasizing that I was back at home in my own dorm room jerking off. And finally, it got about halfway there, and I managed to wriggle the little semi-limp thing inside of her. And that's when you can guess what happened next. I'd worked so hard to get myself excited that the feeling of warm wetness inside of her made me come pretty much instantly the moment I got inside her. And I tried everything I could to stop it, but it was like trying to stop a freight train by stringing a ribbon of toilet paper across the tracks. And she had been so nice to me. She bought wine. She lit candles. She was really, really patient with all of my pathetic awkwardness. How could I ever face her again? I apologized over and over, and she, did that pretending like it was no big deal thing. I had it in my head that I might get it up again. I might redeem myself and last longer this time. But after about 30 minutes, I realized that I was just too nervous and it was never going to happen, and I was just further humiliating myself. So finally, I left her dorm room just before dawn. I walked slowly back to my quad, trying to figure out if there was any way my life could turn out to be anything but miserable, if I couldn't even ever have sex like a normal man. And I cringed as I realized that my roommate was going to hear about this. I mean, they were close friends from back home, and he'd probably ask her about it. I wondered who he might tell, who else she might tell. I mean, how many people on the campus were going to know about this? And so alone in the pre-dawn December chill, I sat down on the wet grass in the middle of the quad, and I cried my freaking eyes out. And sitting there in the wet, cold grass as the sky began to brighten, something shifted in me. I stood up. I shook the tears from my eyes because that was the moment that I realized that, of course, I was never going to be great in bed just by accident. I wasn't going to grow up one day and discover that, like the ugly duckling, I was suddenly swan dude that all the chicks were hot for. And I could learn, I could practice, I could take responsibility for actually making a change in myself. I could decide what kind of man I wanted to become, and I could work for that. And I was going to get this sex thing handled. I slept a few hours, and then the first thing I did was I went to the gigantic campus library, which actually was the third largest in the country at the time. And to my surprise, there was an entire and huge section devoted to sexuality. I mean, literally probably 300 books, including quite a few of the classics of the sexual revolution, and the whole free love generation, where they were writing a lot of books like The Joy of Sex and the lesbian feminist classic Our Bodies, Ourselves, and several translations of the Kama Sutra. And I spent day after day locked in that library, and I read everything. I read Science and Anatomy. I read the poetry of Sappho and the literary smut of Henry Miller and the poems of Anais Nin. I read The Life of Casanova. I read about Dr. Ernst Grafenberg's discovery of the G-spot and about the psychoanalysis of deep-rooted sources of women's sexual fantasies. I read Masters and Johnson's sexual studies and the anatomy of the clitoris, and even discovered that there was something called performance anxiety, which explained exactly what had happened to me that night, and that it turned out to be pretty common. And I started having regular, in-depth, extremely graphic conversations with women about sex, what they liked, what they didn't like, what turned them on, and what ruined it for them. I stumbled almost immediately onto two insights from these conversations. One, girls love to talk about sex, and they will go on and on about every detail in the most graphic way all day long if you're just chill about it. And two, I learned the single most important thing there is to know about being great in bed. Something so simple that it's almost ridiculous, and twice as ridiculous because as far as I could tell, nobody else in any of the hundreds of books I was reading seemed to know about it. And yes, I promise I will tell you exactly what that thing was before the end of this video. I was a man obsessed. And all of these conversations that I was having with the girls about sex, they began to have another result too. A lot more sexual opportunities, and even a few girlfriends. And in a very short time, I learned how to quickly, easily, and expertly give any woman intense orgasms at will. And today, in just a couple of minutes, I'm going to share with you exactly how you can do it too. Yet that is not the end of the story. There's a lot more to great sex than just giving a woman an orgasm. Let's not kid ourselves and think that something she can do twice as fast by using a vibrator makes us king for the day. The world is full of guys that thought they were great in bed because their girl always came during sex, and then couldn't figure out why she broke up with him. If you want to learn how to give any woman the most mind-melting and heart-opening sexual experiences of her life, then you will want to watch this video to the very end. The incredibly sad truth is, most men will go to their graves without ever experiencing this kind of sex. Period. Never. Because there are forces in our culture that literally make it impossible for most men to learn this stuff. This is the real reason why the vast majority of men have so much uncertainty, embarrassment, and frustration with their sex lives. And it's why only a shocking 1 in 7 women ever have an orgasm during intercourse, yet most couples have no idea that none of this is their fault. The fact is this: you've been lied to your entire life about sex and what makes a great lover. The brainwashing around sex begins when you're just a kid. By the time you're 12 and you're starting to get flooded with the hormones, you already know that your male sexuality is bad and wrong and something you should definitely be smart enough to know you have to hide and never mention. Let's face it, showing your penis in school, it's going to get you in big trouble. And it sounds funny and it sounds obvious, but the fact is, as much as the media shows off breasts, I mean, everybody loves breasts. We're supposed to look at breasts. Women are supposed to be proud of their breasts. Everybody loves breasts. But this same media makes it really clear that men do not take off their pants and show their penises. Those things have to be kept hidden at all costs. The way the media shows it, women literally scream in terror if they accidentally see one, when the towel falls off. And frankly, long before you've hit the 7th grade, you've learned that expressing your natural male curiosity about women's bodies is wrong, shameful, and will get you into trouble if the adults find out. And that's just natural curiosity. Forget about your natural male desires. And on that blank slate of shame, here's what our culture writes on our very earliest impressions of what's expected from a man who wants to be a good lover: a huge cock and the stamina to bang away on a woman for hours. And even if you think you already know that this is really just a big fat lie, you're almost certainly also aware that it's still deeply carved somewhere in the back of your brain, like it is on all of us. And these are just a few of the factors that literally brainwash men from children to adulthood so that you end up struggling to consistently give women the kind of powerful, intimately connected sex that they crave. It's not something you've had any control over in the past because the deck was stacked against you before you even sat down to play at the table. And hang on, because there is still more bad news. Because the next thing that happens is a bunch of men's magazines and websites try to capitalize on all this dissatisfaction, and they hire women to write endless articles on what women really want in bed. And we men eat that shit up because, after all, if you want to know what women like in bed, ask a woman, right? The problem is, most of these self-professed experts are just telling you something that got them off personally, their taste, and it may or may not work on the woman in your bed. Or they toe the old feminist line of, you need to slow down and give way more foreplay, which really just means that even they have no idea why sometimes they get off with a man and sometimes they don't. Yet none of this advice that they give is going to work on all women. None of it will work for any woman all the time, and none of it is going to keep a woman from getting bored or disinterested in sex with you, or starting to think about other men, and probably all three. And let's not blame the women for that, because chances are you get bored too. This is not what I want for you, and I know it's not what you desire for yourself. So let's talk about what does work. And let's dive into the 3 essential tips that will put you immediately on the track to being the best lover the woman in your bed has ever experienced. The most important tip I'm about to share with you instantly builds deep intimacy and makes a woman feel authentic sexual connection and sexual trust with you so that she can surrender into much, much more powerful orgasms. This gives her permission to open up her most secret sexual desires with you, and she'll feel like you are a sexual psychic who just intuitively knows exactly what most turns her on. In fact, I call it the sexual psychic technique, and I'll explain exactly how it works and why it makes her feel so much connection and trust with you, whether you're making love to your wife of many, many years or having sex with a woman for the very first time. And to do that, first, I need to warn you about the wrong way to do this. It's the big mistake that virtually every man makes when he wants to be good in bed. And what's worse, it's what most women will tell you should do to be good in bed. Yet, in fact, even for the woman that tells you that this is what she wants, it kills sexual attraction and arousal faster than showing her how you learned how to chug a bottle of beer and then sing the entire alphabet in just one long burp. What is this arousal-killing mistake that probably every other guy she's ever been with has made? Well, it's tip number 1, and it's what you must never do. Asking her what she likes in bed. I actually had a famous female radio host grill me about this one. She was so offended that I would give such bad advice. After all, every women's magazine and talk show constantly have female sex experts yammering on and on about how they wish men would just be more open to just asking their woman about what turns her on and what pleases her. Why can't they just ask us? Why can't they just talk about it? And to be fair, it's not that bad to ask her what she likes in bed as dinner conversation or in flirty conversation in a bar. But do not ask a woman what she wants while you're making love to her, or right before or right after, because when you do that, it makes you look tentative and uncertain, and that is not sexy. It breaks her out of that moment of pleasure and sexiness when she was in her body and aroused, and instead, it engages her logical thinking brain, which is exactly what you don't want if you ever want her to have an orgasm. It makes her wish that she was with a man who already knew what turned her on. So I don't care what the women's shows say. Asking her what she wants when you're in bed will almost always be a bad move. It does not make you a cool, evolved guy who's a good communicator, who's comfortable to talk openly about sex, and who can make women feel respected by taking the time to communicate and understand her feelings and desires. See, there are basically 2 ways that virtually every man goes wrong in bed. 1, he's either an insensitive jerk who just bangs her like you saw in porn and is mostly just psyched that he got laid and got himself off. Or 2, he's the sensitive, try-hard wuss. He's the guy who women wish they could like, but they just can't really get turned on for him. Now, I'm going to tell you exactly what to do instead so that you never have to ask a woman again about what turns her on, and instead, you'll already know exactly how she wants to be touched, how she wants to be seduced, how she fantasizes about getting fucked, so that before she even knows what's happening, you're giving her powerful, leg-shaking orgasms, faster than she's ever come before, and while you're smirking because you've barely even gotten started yet, she's already thinking, who the hell is this guy and where did he learn to do that? Now, here's the second important tip. This one's funny because it seems so easy and obvious, It's literally one of the easiest ways to give a woman an orgasm, and yet I've never heard anyone else teaching it. Let's face it, you're listening to me talk right now because when the woman that you're with is enjoying sex and having orgasms, it's more fun for you too. Nothing is more of a turn on than a woman having an orgasm. So if you're like most normal men, when you feel like she's getting close, you have this urge to sprint for the finish. It's just wired into us to go a little faster, a little harder, a little deeper, get the job done. This is the way men are designed. When we get towards the end, it's time to go for it. Now, if you've ever seen women at a dance club, or even if you just watch a woman when the music comes on in any room, you'll immediately notice that women are much more affected by rhythm than men are. And I'm guessing that's because it's so wired into their sexual response. When you're stimulating your partner, whether with your fingers, your tongue, or during fucking, it's important that you find not just where and how she likes to be touched, but to focus on finding the rhythm that she really responds to. Then, and here's where almost every guy goes wrong, as she gets more and more excited and it seems like she's going to come, resist the natural urge to speed up. What usually happens is when you go faster and harder, the beat changes a little bit. You drop the beat, you lose the rhythm, and it was the rhythm that was working. And then you start to hear her say things like, oh, I'm so close, or wait, I was almost there. And when I say that it's not men's fault that we don't know that it was the rhythm thing that was the problem, I mean it because women don't seem to know about this either. They can't seem to figure out why they felt so close and they couldn't quite come. And this happens especially during intercourse. Here's what you should do instead. When you do something that starts getting her hot, just keep going without changing the rhythm. It's that simple. In a few minutes, even just a few seconds sometimes, she'll have a deep, satisfying orgasm. And that's it. And yeah, it actually is that easy. Think of using this rhythm method as the world's easiest and coolest magic trick. Nobody can figure out how you did it. It leaves everyone amazed every time, and it's so stupid simple that you never ever get it wrong. So the next time you hear, I'm almost there, you won't have to worry about it ending in frustration, or worse, her faking it. So whether we men like it or not, when a woman can't come with you, it embarrasses her. She usually feels like she's the one who's doing something wrong, or she figures you'll be disappointed. In fact, she knows it because every other guy she's ever been with who couldn't make her come acted grumpy and disappointed and insecure afterwards, or asked her the dreaded, what would turn you on, baby, question. And can you see that if you can't make a woman come, and it's been a while, and she keeps saying, I'm almost there, and she's not coming all night long, and then after that, you ask her that question, what would you like? I mean, that has got to be even more frustrating for her. She usually doesn't really know why she's not having an orgasm, and when you ask, it frequently causes her to come to the simple conclusion that you just don't really turn her on that much. Well, that's not a problem anymore. At least not for you, because now you can use this simple little rhythm trick and it works like a charm on those women. Can you see yourself the next time you're with a woman and she says, wait, I'm almost there? And instead of getting all worked up and trying like crazy to make something happen like every other guy she's ever been with, you can just give her a confident smile and say, I got you, baby. Here you go. And then guide her through a massive climax and just hold that rhythm while she bucks and goes crazy with pleasure beneath you. And that is a very, very good feeling. And it gets better because there are two very simple variations on the rhythm method that work even better. In fact, they're the key to giving women multiple orgasms, extended orgasms, and what I call stacked orgasms. Stacked orgasm is when you've already got her coming in an extended orgasm, and then you change the rhythm in just the right way, at just the right moment, and it actually knocks her into an even higher state of orgasm. When you learn the trick to doing this right, she will literally scream the walls down. Stick with this video to the very end. I'm going to tell you exactly how to learn that trick today. Trust me, you're going to want to try that one with your woman tonight, or with the very next woman you're with if you're currently single, because it is awesome. Okay, here's the most important tip of all. The sexual psychic tip that I mentioned earlier. The secret of how you're going to know exactly what most turns on a woman in bed without having to ask her. There is nothing more empowering, more freeing than knowing exactly how to touch a woman to get her turned on and exactly how to have sex with her to unlock her most secret fantasies, her most intense pleasure, never having to guess or worry if you're doing it right or if she's faking it. So let's put an end to that worry right now. Next time you're seducing your woman, here's what you do. Stop thinking about what you should do. In fact, stop thinking at all. And instead of focusing on the dialogue in your head, focus on the input from your five senses. Listen, feel, smell, taste, and see her. When you continue to focus on opening your attention into her body, two things begin to happen that are pretty cool. One is she actually feels your attention, and you'll begin to notice that you can actually feel what's going on inside her body. You'll begin to know where she wants to be touched almost before she does. Then touch her there, obviously, but keep focusing on her with all five senses. There are a few simple but subtle tricks to doing this really effectively. Once you get it, three amazing things happen. One, you'll know exactly how to stimulate her, whether with your hands and tongue or when you're actually having intercourse with her. You'll know exactly how to drive her straight towards arousal and orgasm without having to guess. And two, because she can actually sense that you're tuned into her, when she feels you doing this, she'll begin to feel a growing sense of intimacy and connection with you, which also makes it much, much easier for her to come and to experience much more powerful orgasms with you. And three, this growing sense of intimacy that she feels, this connection, also makes her feel good about her own sexuality. It makes her feel pretty, it makes her feel sexy, and it makes her feel accepted as a sexual being. And this gives her permission to be more sexual with you and to steer sex towards acting out her naughtiest secret fantasies. Why does this work? Look, women have issues and anxieties around their sexuality exactly the way men do. And when you say to a woman that you want to know what her dirtiest sexual fantasies are, she's not going to tell you the full truth because she's insecure too. She's afraid of being judged. And that's why when you really understand how to do the sexual psychic technique the right way, she feels like the two of you are just sexually in sync. And that is what makes her feel safe to explore her secret desires with you. Imagine your sex life when you confidently know exactly what to do with that woman in your bed that is going to unleash her wildest desires, and know how to make her willing and eager to share the craziest sex of her life with you. You'll be giving her orgasms like no other man has ever been able to do, making her feel sexier, more sexually free than she's ever felt, and all while getting her to feel more emotionally and intimately connected to you as a lover and as a man. This stage feels almost magical. You're actually going to be able to give her orgasms at will. Women will literally go crazy when you pull this trick off, and she's going to be wondering how on earth you can be making her come so quickly and easily. If you're in a relationship right now, imagine knowing that you can just pour pleasure into the girl you love until she weeps tears of joy. And then after collapsing together into a state of deep and connected bliss, that feeling that you get, she puts her head on your chest with that slightly naughty grin on her face like she just won the lottery and she doesn't want anyone else to know. So look, you now have two choices. I know that some of the tips and information I covered in this video came pretty fast, and some of them might seem a bit confusing. You probably understand how different this system is for creating incredible sexual pleasure, connection, and ultimately devotion from a woman. And hopefully you took some notes, because you certainly can go it alone from here. And if you follow the tips in this video, you will start to get amazing results in the bedroom. Or follow my recommendation. Take the brain dead simple, works every time path that the vast majority of men who really care about women take. See, I've already done the work for you to figure out and to test every detail of making a complete, simple, and virtually foolproof system that thousands of couples are already using to enjoy the kind of incredible sex every single day that they never imagined was possible. I call it revolutionary sex. I'm Alex Allman, and I'm the creator of Revolutionary Sex, the proven system for giving any man confident ease and power to win any woman's respect, admiration, and deep devotion by giving her the most mind-melting multiple orgasms of her life. This radically simple system will work for you. Even if you've always been nervous around women and sexuality in the past and you've got some issues there, even if you think you're unattractive the way I did, fat, bald, or you think you're short, or You never imagined considering even the possibility that any woman might actually find you sexy. Even if you're in a relationship with a woman who has a low or has no sex drive at all, even if you're a virgin who has no sexual experience, even if you have performance problems, erectile dysfunction, premature ejaculation, anything from the past, and even if you are already pretty damn good in bed and you know it, and you just want to be better, or even if you think you've tried everything. Now, let me tell you what revolutionary sex is not, just so you know exactly what you're about to experience. It's not another feminist manual that tells you, slow down, give her more foreplay, and be more sensitive and emotionally available so you can serve the Earth Mother Goddess. And it is definitely not the macho, just dominate her and fuck her like a real man crap either. What it is the result of thousands and thousands of hours of study of every other methodology out there, from ancient Tantra to contemporary sexual shamanism, combined with years of practice, of innovation, and of testing and testing and testing, and then proven with the results of thousands of men, women, and couples who've tried revolutionary sex and completely redefined the idea of just how great and endlessly fulfilling a great sex life can really be. I believe that you are the kind of man like me that lives for those moments, looking down at your lover after it's over, her hair wet with sweat and the tears of joy that are still leaking from the corners of her eyes, and her face is flushed and angelic the way she looks up at you, her body still shaking in aftershocks from all of those explosive orgasms, still unable to speak because her brain has been so blown open by pleasure. And all she can manage in that state is a weak, hoarse little giggle. Man, that feels good. And if that's not how you feel about it, if you want to use these powerful intimacy building techniques so you can, turn women into your sex toys or be manipulative in some way, please close this window now and leave this page. I'm serious. Revolutionary sex was created expressly for men who love women, men who love giving women incredible sexual pleasure, and men who are open to the kind of deep connection that can only happen in a sexual relationship. So if you're not that kind of man, I'm sorry to have wasted your time. You probably don't belong here. On the other hand, if you are a man who loves women, a man who enjoys the sweetness of the feminine and gets pleasure from making women smile, and she will be smiling all day, if you love nothing more than opening a woman up to her own beauty and giving her powerful sexual and sensual pleasure, and especially if you want a particular and special woman to feel deep, surrendered devotion to you as her man, then revolutionary sex isn't just a system for you, it's the only system for you. Want to know what kind of results men like us are getting from revolutionary sex? I got this email from Sam. He said, my girlfriend had more orgasms than she could count. She used to have the odd few that weren't very amazing, as she said, compared to after using these tips. And she even asked for sex again later